So today's video is going to be a little bit different. I'm not going to be editing any images or talking about editing. We're talking about how to photograph. What I want to discuss is something that I've had several people call me and talk about or ask me about, really in a panic half the time, over the past few years, is data backup. They call me because they've had a hard drive crash, they've had an external drive crash, something has gone wrong, and they've lost all their images that it may have taken them several years to accumulate. And it can be really, really unsettling to, especially a new photographer, to all of a sudden have a glitch, an error somewhere, and you feel like you've lost everything. I'm going to run through my process in Lightroom of how I pull images off the camera and save them, because it feeds into how I address making sure that I have those images going forward without ever having to worry about losing them. So let's jump right into it. What I use is known as the 3-2-1 backup rule, and it's a pretty simple process of making sure that you keep 3 copies of your images at all times. You got one primary copy that's your main copy that you work on, that you do all of your edits on, that you print off if you need, whatever you need, that's your primary go-to. And then you want to have 2 backups stored in 2 different places, with one being off-site. And just for example, I have my images stored on one main big drive. I think it's a 14 terabyte hard drive. And then I have a second drive that I use called raw files, just stores raw files. It's not connected in any way to the first one. It just sits there by itself. And then I use a cloud backup that backs up all of my hard drives called Backblaze. And it backs them off site, so that if the worst happens and I lose the first 2 copies, I can always just go in and pull those copies down from Backblaze to rebuild it, or they will send me a hard drive that I can keep for up to 30 days and then send them back. So this is Backblaze for those of you who never used it. It's got some business solutions, but it has a really neat personal backup that you can use. It's $9-10 a month, and it runs in the background. You can actually see it running right up here. It runs in the background, and it monitors my hard drives every 24 hours or so. It looks at all the files on the hard drives, and if anything has been added or removed, it will go in and replicate that to my backup in the cloud. And I've had to do it a couple of times where I've had something go wrong with a file or something. And the easiest thing for me to do, because it was a couple of days had gone by, rather than trying to figure out how to rebuild it, just go to Backblaze and download it. You can download it back in. One warning, one caveat that I will give you when you're using Backblaze: if you have a tremendous number of photos to begin with, if you're talking about terabytes worth of data when you begin, when you first install Backblaze and it starts backing up those hard drives, it's going to run really fast, and it's going to back up everything for a number of days, maybe a week or so. But eventually, your internet service provider is going to throttle that connection. I think the last time I did a full restore backup, completely rebuilt it, it was probably 3 or 4 years ago. It ended up taking, I think, about almost a month to completely rebuild that catalog. So it can take a while, but believe me, it's working, and it will save your life. And as you can see for mine, I've got my Backblaze remaining 0 files. So mine's up to date. So that's Backblaze, backblaze.com. I'm not paid by Backblaze. There are some other solutions, iDrive, Carbonite, several different ones that offer similar solutions. The selling point for me was the fact that I have multiple external hard drives that I store everything on, and Backblaze will back those up no matter how many they are. Now, as far as my computer itself, it's backed up because I'm using an Apple product. I'm using a Mac, backed up through Time Machine, which is an Apple piece of software, and I have a separate hard drive that backs up my whole computer. If I ever go to rebuild the computer, I just let the time machine rebuild it. So my computer itself is not backed up, but my external hard drives are backed up by Backblaze. I'm going to jump into my process and show you how I import the images and set them up for the 321 backup. I've got a card installed in the computer that came out of my camera, and I'm going to go into import photos and videos. It's going to interrogate that drive, and it wants to see, since I've got new photos up here, it's going to compare them to the photos that are already in my Lightroom catalog to see if we've got anything new that we need. This is actually a re-import. This is my edit catalog. So I've already done these. These were captured back, I believe in March. As I import these images in, I want to do a couple of things. And to help that 321 backup along, one of the big things I'm going to do is I'm going to use Lightroom to make a second copy. And so when it imports the images, it's going to import them into my image folder here. And then it's also going to make a second copy to my raw files drive. And I'm going to give this a name. This will be Polly's. There we go. Give it a keyword. Polly's Island's already in there. So I'm going to tell it it's night photography. This will help you find those images later on. Really get you ahead of the curve. They're saving into that testing folder. They're all checked. And we're going to hit import. Now, this can take a little bit of time or a long time depending on the speed of your computer and the speed of the card that's being read, speed of the connection, any number of things. And this has been in the past a big point of contention for people that use Lightroom. They complain that it takes too long to import the images. There are a lot of people that will take the images off of the card and drag them into the hard drive and then import them into the Lightroom catalog. And that's a perfectly valid way to do it. It's just always worked best for me to do it this way. And I don't have a problem with the wait. I kind of see the wait as giving me some extra time. I will set the import up and then I'll walk away. A lot of times it's really neat because I'm shooting very, very early in the morning, late at night till early in the morning, and I'll come home and it'll, be barely light or still very early. I'll load the images in, set the import up, and then I'll go lay down and sleep for an hour or two. And the import it can take a bit of time, but not hours, obviously. But by the time I get up, they're all imported and they're ready for me to sit down and start my edits. So I'm going to let this run for a few minutes and we'll see where we are when I get back. And we're done. Now I've got these images imported, and of course they currently live on my image drive, and this is just one of my naming conventions. So I keep everything in order, and I can show in the Finder where they live here, but they are also here. And these run by date of import. So there we go. Same images. They're in a different location. Now, I don't ever touch these. They just pretty much live here right on. And then, of course, I also have a copy of these that lives in Backblaze. So I have 3 copies of my images in 2 different hard drives and 1 stored in the cloud. And this will protect you from the worst happening, from you waking up one day and either your, God forbid, your house or something is burned down which would be absolute worst case scenario. But more likely is you wake up after a summer storm or something and there's been a lightning strike and one or more of your hard drives is now fried. And I have gotten these calls from people, hey, do you know anything I can do to help recover these images? My hard drive it went to crap and now I don't know what to do. And I've got all of these images from these sessions and people are calling me and I don't know what to do. I've got pictures of my kids from 10 years ago stored on these and there is something that you can do, but unfortunately it can cost thousands and thousands of dollars. There are companies that will rebuild your hard drive. They'll take that hard drive and rebuild it for you. But the much easier thing to do is to go ahead and employ this process now. And if you're just starting out, I highly, highly encourage you to do this, because the sooner you start it, the more it becomes part of your process. It may not seem like a big deal now. Hey, I can just store these images on my computer. I don't shoot that much. I was in that spot 10 years ago, and now I've got a 14 terabyte hard drive that has all my images on it it's starting to get close to being filled up. It can happen quicker than you think. It can have some not so good consequences if it fails, but there fortunately are some very easy ways to prevent it. So remember, it's the 3-2-1 backup rule. It'll keep you safe. It'll keep your data safe. And it is well worth the small expense that it's going to take you and the small time that it's going to take you to do it. That's today's video. I hope you got something good out of it. Please remember to like, comment, and share. It helps me out more than you know. If there's a topic you'd like to see me cover, please leave me a comment, drop me a message. I'd be happy to hear from you. Now it's time to get out there and capture some magic.